Hello, welcome back to a new Unreal Engine video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the dialogue system, but we're going to make it a bit more advanced. In the original video, we made it a simple dialogue system that you could just lap onto an actor and just talk with it. But this time around, let's add a bit more changes to allow for more flexibility, per se. Now, this is the original system. Just give me a few minutes. We'll upgrade it, and I'll show you what we got. And we're back. Now, we made a few changes, some obvious changes like having an interactable interface here. So now we can have an interactable interface. It has one function, interact, takes in a player controller, and that's pretty much it. Now we can go into the player and we can adjust our line trace. So from our camera now, instead, we can get the hit actor, we can get the player controller, and we can just call that interact. Instead of doing a get component by class, we can now do it the proper way through an interact interface. Okay, so there has been a bunch of changes here, and the most notable one is we'll start in the dialog entry, and you'll notice that we got rid of the other two variables that were here, and we replaced it with a dialog state script, and that is a class reference to this dialog state script object. And that's what this is. It's just a plain old object that was, you just create the object, and it's called the dialog state script. And what it does, and just a general overview, is it's going to dynamically control our states for our dialog. So you'll notice that we have nothing in the event graph. We have one function, and it's just called update state. And this update state, all it's going to do is it's going to take in our interacting player controller, so our third person player controller, or first person, whichever player controller you're using. We'll take in the dialog component, and we'll take in the current index that we're at chatting, right? And this is just going to do the get. It's just going to do a quick get, and we're just going to pass out the new dialog, and that's all it's going to do. So with that being said now, and the PDA stays the same, the W dialog, the main widget, has some changes to it. The choices doesn't have any changes, but let's take a look at the new widget now. The new widget, you'll notice that there's a bunch of different things going on here. So the first thing, we still have the create dialog here, but now what we're doing is we're going to just save this current index because we need to use it down here and stuff. So we'll save the current index, and then we swapped it out for a sequence here so that our pins and things aren't going all over the place. So we first clear out the children like we did before. Now, instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go to this dialog component, and we're going to do a handle state script. Now, this function in the dialog component, handle state script, is going to take in the current index, and it's going to output our state script. Now you'll see, now you remember in our data driven or data stuff, the data asset, it is a class reference. So this handle state script is kind of, if it's passing out the object reference itself, you can kind of figure that we're going to be constructing the object inside this function. And that is exactly what we'll do. We'll cover that when we get to the component. And then on the next sequence here, what we're going to do is we're just going to, when we promote that to a variable, we're just going to want to check to see if it's valid. Because if we don't have a valid state script, then it doesn't really matter what we're doing. We just want to go to the next state basically in the data asset. So that's what the not valid is here. This is kind of like the old route here. We're just going to get it. But you'll notice that we have this function create dialog options. The old way we had it like off to the side here, and it was just like that KVP loop and things. That's basically what it's doing. I just collapsed it to a function, but instead it takes in the dialog entry now instead. So if we see these dialog options, it was just that same function. Here it does the keys not empty and then removes the widget. It was what we had in the old system, but this was just collapsed to a function because we need to use it twice now, because once it handles it via the state script, and then once it handles it if you don't have a state script. So in the event graph, so if we have the state script, we'll go and update the state, and this is where we get our player controller, owning player. Now, if you remember, when we do it via the component, we actually add the widget to our player. So when we get the owning player, this is actually ourself. This is our player. And then we have our dialog component, which is on our actor. So now we have access to both our controller, and we have access to the dialog component, along with, since the dialog component is attached to the actor we're interacting with, we'll have access to all parts that we need. And then we just pass in the current index. And you'll notice that this has the new dialog that comes out, and that's why we just pass it into dialog options. And then if it's not valid, we don't have a state script, then just run the normal create the widget, right? So now in the dialog component, there was a couple of changes you'll notice here. So in the dialog component, we now have a handle state script. I also deleted the promoting this to a variable. We don't really need it, so I just deleted it. That's about it. The rest of this chat functionality is the same. It just creates the widget, puts it on screen, shows the mouse cursor and things like that. But this handle state script, it is fairly simple here. You'll notice we have a new variable. It is dialog states, and it is a map of a index. It's the map of the indexes basically with our created dialog states. So this is a way that our component is going to be able to dynamically handle the states and return states that we have already created. So we don't have to go through and just create them overall multiple times. So this handle state script takes in the index, checks to see if we have the index. If we do, then just return it. If we don't, go ahead and grab it out of our dialog database, and then we'll just, if it's valid, we'll create it here, we'll construct it, and then we'll add it to that map, and then we'll just return it. If it's not valid, we'll just return nothing. When we get back to the widget, it will just say, take the normal route instead of doing anything with these states. Now you'll notice that this structure has pins missing. You can enable and disable pins on the side here if you want to have them. We don't need them here. We just need the script. And so when we construct that object, we add it to there and then we return it. If not, then we just send it out here. Now, what is so special about these state scripts? Now, if you take a look at the state scripts, these state scripts, the normal one, it doesn't have anything. And you're like, well, okay, well, what do I do with a state script? Well, let's say if we wanted to have a character with some memory, for example, like the character wanted to remember who they talked to. Well, with our new simple dialog system now, our data asset, it now takes in a class, right? So you can see here. So let's say we have our normal like hello. I modified this slightly for different things, but the main thing is here we have index 0, which is our normal hello, right? Well, now we can take in a dialog state script and we can say state script memory and then next dialog options here. So what does this state script memory do? So this state script memory, the class reference, it'll construct the object, right? And it'll pass it in and it'll send it through. And so with this state script memory now, with this object, it looks a little all over the place, right? But basically we have that one function, the update state here, taken in this, it'll just return that get. So it'll just grab the current dialog that we're at. And this memory basically is going to hold this player controller that we get in and it'll save it. It'll just save it. If it's not valid, it'll save it. Now you can create this as an array of saved interacted controllers if you have multiple people that you want to interact with or multiple people that you want to save. But for our instance, we just have one player controller. We'll just save it. We'll just save the single player. And so we'll grab that dialog. We'll check to see if our saved interactive controller is valid. If it's not valid or it doesn't equal our current one, we'll update it. Now you can do a bit more logic here, but that's basically the core. So it grabs that. And what this is going to do is it's going to dynamically change how our dialog works. So with that, we can still pass, you can see we have these makes, right? We have the makes here. We're making new ones. But you'll see that we're actually changing the dialog dynamically based on if our player controller has interacted with it. And that's what it's doing. It's just going to do a little append here just as an example, and it'll return the new dialog. Now you can customize this however you want. If you want effects, if you want sounds, if you want quests, if you want to complete quests, you have all the data here because you have the controller, so which means you can get the controller, you can get the player, you have the dialog component, which means you can get the person you're interacting with, you can get anything they have, and then you have the current index, of course. So you can check if you have a quest completed, if there's a quest available. If there is no quests available, then you can just jump to something else. If there is a quest available, then you can jump to a specific dialogue here for having a quest and things like that. So now to see it in action, if we want to jump in, we can go ahead here. We can go back and interact, and we can say, hey, hello, player controller. Now you notice hello is what we have in the dialogue, but we're appending player controller. And it's like, hello, who are you? I'm you. What? Yeah, you heard me. Okay, and now if we interact with it again, it says, welcome back. Because now it had the memory of remembering which player controller we actually interacted with. Who are you? I'm you. I'm out of here. And so that is how we can create a more dynamic system where you don't have to actually worry about, use cases. Things like quests. Because that's probably like the main thing you'd be using dialogue systems for, right? Is quests. So now you can easily just create a state script, check to see if there's a quest available, adjust the data as necessary, and just go with it. Just customize it. It's highly customizable. Anyways, I hope you found that enjoyable. I hope you found it helpful. And thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.